last few weeks, there has been considerable conversation about President Trump's deployment of National Guards to American cities like Chicago and Portland. There have been court orders telling the president to stop his actions and considerable commentary about how to deal with it, and more importantly, the implications of these actions. I'm Dan Gowerty. In this edition of Elk Grove News Podcast, we'll listen to 3 statewide elected officials, 2 from Illinois and 1 from California, about their views and the implications and how it might be dealt with. Let's start with a Tuesday, October 7th interview on National Public Radio's Morning Edition with Kwame Raoul, the Attorney General of Illinois.
Do you assume that this is a way to prepare for some much larger deployment of troops if they can get the court's permission to do so?
Well, one of the things that I have articulated and we've said in our pleadings is that the president has articulated that he wants to use the cities of America as military training grounds. It's come out of his own mouth. So there's your evidence.
In this clip, even though the Attorney General didn't come out and say it, he implied there is a far more nefarious reason why Mr. Trump is deploying the National Guard to Chicago. Coincidentally, about an hour later on KQED's Forum program, there was a discussion about how California might secede from the United States. During that show, the host received an unexpected call from Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. This is what the Lieutenant Governor had to say about those opposing Trump and how it might be dealt with.
The best thing we can do is remind Americans that this is a system of governance. That's what democracy is, that we have a right to demand responsiveness from our leaders, that if they take away our health care, if they make it more expensive, we go to the polls and we fight back. So we have a lot of power within the country to fight back against these efforts of the MAGA Republicans to move toward an autocratic system that are, to me, a much more important way to mobilize than going down a rabbit hole of this idea of succession.
We agree with her assessment that California seceding from the Union is simply not realistic. However, her view that simply getting people to vote will solve problems is simplistic, particularly in this era of Donald Trump. What happens if Democrats mobilize their vote and by some stroke of luck, win control of Congress during the 2026 midterms? This brings us to our third audio clip, this one from a Tuesday news conference by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Here is what the governor had to say about deployment of troops in American cities like Chicago.
Since the beginning of this invasion, families have been snatched up off the streets or removed from their homes, zip-tied and detained for hours, including especially U.S. citizens and legal residents of our state. And in the words of CBP Chief Patrol Agent Greg Bovino, they're being chosen by how they look. Peaceful protesters have been hit with tear gas and shot with rubber bullets. Journalists simply reporting the facts on the ground have been targeted and arrested. U.S. citizens, including children, have been traumatized and detained. This escalation of violence is targeted and intentional and premeditated. The Trump administration is following a playbook: cause chaos, create fear and confusion, make it seem like peaceful protesters are a mob by firing gas pellets and tear gas canisters at them. Why? To create the pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act so that he can send military troops to our city. He wants to justify and normalize the presence of armed soldiers under his direct command.
We agree with the governor's assessment. Aside from the obvious, Trump is setting the stage for something far more diabolical. Could he be trying to provoke people so that he could invoke the Insurrection Act and place the military in major American cities and declare a state of emergency? What happens if Democrats win the midterm election? Will Trump again claim election fraud and have his supporters riot at the United States Capitol again to keep the new Congress from being seated? Or, as we suggested, will he just simply declare martial law? The Illinois Attorney General and Governor are on the right track. Action is needed today, not during the midterm elections, as suggested by California's Lieutenant Governor, by those elected officials and Americans brave enough to stand up against Trump's American authoritarian rule.